The rain had stopped only an hour ago, leaving the Afghan dust turned to mud. The camp smelled like oil, wet sandbags, and coffee that had been burning on the hot plate since dawn. Sergeant Riley Boone sat on a cracked wooden crate under the makeshift awning, methodically tending to the long rifle sprawled across her lap, the M24 scarred from years of use. The bolt was worn, the scope lens chipped at the edge, but she handled it like a violinist tuning a priceless instrument. Each pass of the rag, each measured pull of the bore brush, was precise, ritualistic. She didn't notice the colonel until the conversation around her had died down. Soldiers leaned back in their chairs or froze halfway through a laugh. Colonel Harlan Reese, the kind of man whose presence made even seasoned rangers sit straighter, had stopped dead just 3 feet away. His sharp blue eyes weren't on Riley, though. They were locked on the faded engraving burned into the wooden stock of her rifle. It was subtle, worn by years of handling and sand-scouring wind, but unmistakable, the seal of the Deadeye division. The colonel's face tightened. His jaw locked, his lips parted as though he was about to say something, but no words came out. Instead, silence pressed down on the group. The Deadeye division wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Not on paper, not in rumor, not even in whispers. It was the kind of unit that only showed up in black files locked in safes 5 stories underground, the kind people got reassigned, or disappeared, for mentioning. "Where the hell did you get that?" the colonel said finally, his voice low, dangerous. Riley looked up, rag still in hand, and felt every eye in the room cut to her. She wasn't supposed to tell the truth. She wasn't supposed to tell anything. But the colonel's gaze told her one thing. He already knew the answer. Before she could form a reply, the alarms went off. The sharp, rising wail knifed through the humid night, echoing off the mud brick walls of the outpost. Men dropped their trays, scrambled for rifles. The colonel's stare broke away, replaced by the clipped urgency of command. "Contact. South perimeter." The camp erupted into chaos. Riley shoved the rag into her pocket, slammed the bolt back into the M24, and snapped the scope covers open in one fluid motion. She didn't wait for permission, she didn't need it. The walls shook with the thud of RPG fire. Shouts filled the night, boots pounded against gravel. The air tasted of cordite and grit as the first streaks of tracer fire lanced through the darkness. From the guard tower, flares burst overhead, painting the battlefield in green-white light. Figures moved in the distance, darting between rocks and ditches, their rifles spitting fire. Insurgents. More than a probing raid, this was a full push. Riley sprinted up the ladder of the nearest watch post 2 rungs at a time, mud slick beneath her boots. Her shoulders slammed into the railing as she slid into position. She dropped to a knee, flipped the bipod down, and pressed the worn cheek pad against her face. Through the scope, the chaos narrowed to clarity. A man in black robes sprinted with a tube slung over his shoulder. "RP." Riley exhaled. One smooth pull of the trigger. The recoil nudged her shoulder, and the man folded mid-stride, the launcher skidding into the dirt. "Snipers on," someone below shouted. The word spread like wildfire. Where panic had started to creep in, discipline returned. The squad knew someone had their backs now. Another target rose, this one steadying a PKM on the lip of a ridge. Riley's breath slowed, her body anchored. One shot. The gunner collapsed, weapon clattering into the dust. "Keep firing," the colonel barked somewhere below. "Hold the line." Mortar tubes barked from the distance, their thumps rolling like drums across the valley. Riley saw the arcs, 3 of them converging toward the outpost. No time for hesitation. She shifted, aimed high, found the faint silhouette of the loader rearming the tube. Her fingers squeezed, the man jerked sideways, and the tube tipped uselessly into the dirt. But one round had already launched. The incoming shell whistled down, landing just beyond the motor pool. The ground shuddered, throwing grit across her rifle. A Humvee's windshield blew inward in shards. "Boone." The voice snapped her back. It was Sergeant Delgado, crouched at the tower base, waving frantically. "Colonel wants you at command, now?" Riley hesitated, scope still hunting. Targets darted, fell, reappeared. Every second mattered. But orders were orders. She flicked the safety, slung the rifle, and slid down the ladder, boots hitting mud. Inside the command tent, light flickered off maps pinned to walls, radios squawking with overlapping reports. The colonel stood at the table, headset pressed against his ear, shouting for coordinates. When Riley stepped in, his eyes locked on her again, hard and unyielding. "You," he said, stabbing a finger at her. "That rifle isn't standard issue. That seal isn't standard anything. You're going to tell me right now who trained you." "Sir," Riley started, but the tent rattled with another blast. Dust rained from the canvas roof. "Don't play games, Sergeant. My men are dying out there. And you shoot like a ghost I buried 5 years ago." Her throat went dry. 5 years. That lined up too perfectly. She hadn't thought anyone outside the black files would recognize the mark, much less connect it to the truth. She opened her mouth, but the radio crackled. South wall breached. Multiple hostiles inside the wire. The colonel swore, slammed his headset down and grabbed his rifle. His stare burned into her one last time. "We'll settle this after. For now, you're with me." The outpost had become a furnace. Smoke curled from burning vehicles. The crack of rifles, the scream of the wounded, the thunder of grenades turning sandbags to shrapnel, it all blended into a single roar. Riley moved beside the colonel, picking targets with mechanical precision, each shot clearing a path. Soldiers rallied behind them, drawing courage from their ferocity. They pushed toward the breach, where the wire fence hung shredded and insurgents poured through. A machine gun rattled from a collapsed bunker, pinning down 2 Rangers behind a supply truck. Riley dropped to prone, scope leveled, and cut the gunner mid-burst. The Rangers surged forward, tossing grenades that silenced the bunker for good. Minutes blurred into a brutal rhythm. Move, fire, reload, duck. Blood mixed with mud. Shadows writhed in the flare light, men screamed, silence followed. Finally, after what felt like an hour but could only have been 20 minutes, the shooting began to taper. The last figures slipped back into the night, leaving bodies scattered across the wire. Breathing hard, Riley leaned against the sandbags, sweat streaking dirt down her face. Her rifle smoked faintly, barrel hot to the touch. The colonel stood a few feet away, chest heaving, uniform torn by a grazing shot. He looked at her not like a commander appraising a soldier, but like a man staring at a secret that shouldn't exist. "You're Deadeye," he said quietly, almost to himself. Riley didn't answer. He stepped closer, voice low but sharp as a knife. "They disbanded that unit. Erased it. Every file shredded, every operator gone. And yet here you are, carving ghosts into the dirt with a rifle that shouldn't even be in circulation. So I'll ask one more time, who the hell are you?" Riley stared back, heartbeat pounding in her ears. Around them, medics shouted orders, the wounded cried, and soldiers staggered with exhaustion. The outpost was still smoldering. And in that chaos, Riley knew one thing for certain. Her past had just caught up with her. The silence after battle was never quiet. It was the ragged gasps of the wounded, the metallic stench of blood mixing with oil and smoke, the low murmur of medics calling for more gauze, more morphine, more time. It was boots crunching over brass casings and the distant echoes of insurgents melting back into the mountains. Sergeant Riley Boone wiped her hands across her face, smearing dirt and powder into streaks, then forced herself upright. Her body buzzed with adrenaline, but her mind carried the weight of what the colonel had said. Deadeye. The word wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Colonel Reese hadn't pressed her again, not yet. Instead, he turned his fury outward, barking orders to fortify the breach, to drag in the dead, to get machine guns repositioned before another wave hit. His presence was like a steel rod holding the line upright. Still, Riley felt his eyes on her every few minutes, sharp and probing, as though he was waiting for her to slip and reveal everything. By dawn, the camp looked like it had survived an earthquake. Sandbags shredded, Humvees blackened, bullet holes peppered across every surface. The smell of charred flesh lingered in places Riley avoided looking. Soldiers moved like ghosts, exhausted but alive. Riley sat against the remnants of a wall, her M24 across her knees. She should have felt relief. They'd held. But instead, a coil of dread wound tied her inside her chest. The Deadeye seal had been spotted. And once noticed, it could never be unseen. She thought back to the night she'd carved it into the stock. A foolish act, maybe, but one she couldn't resist. Deadeye wasn't just a unit. It was blood and fire, the bond of soldiers who had been erased, denied, betrayed. That mark was all she had left. Boone. The voice snapped her head up. Sergeant Delgado crouched beside her, helmet crooked, a weary grin plastered on his soot-streaked face. "You shoot like the devil's personal hitman," he said. "Never seen anything like it. Half the guys swear you dropped 10 before I could even pop my first mag." Riley gave a half-smile, shaking her head. "Exaggeration. Not by much." Delgado's grin faltered, his voice lowering. "But the colonel? He's not smiling. What's his deal with you?" Before she could answer, Reese's voice cut across the camp. "Boone, my tent. Now." Delgado gave her a look, half sympathy, half warning. Riley stood, slung her rifle and made the slow walk. Inside the colonel's tent, The air was cooler but no less suffocating. The maps on the table had been updated with grease pencil lines showing last night's assault. Cigarette smoke curled lazily toward the ceiling. Reese stood with arms folded, his uniform jacket discarded, the scar across his jaw visible in the pale light. He didn't waste time. Sit. Riley remained standing. Reese's eyes narrowed. Fine. Then stand and answer. Who trained you? She kept her voice steady. Army Marksmanship School, Fort Benning. Same as anyone else. Bullshit. He slammed his hand against the map table, the coffee mug rattling. You shoot like you've got wind tables tattooed on your brain. I've seen good snipers. I've seen the best. And you don't just match them, you are one of them. That rifle of yours? I recognized the seal the second I saw it. Deadeye Division. You think I don't remember? Her jaw clenched. With respect, sir, Deadeye never existed. Reese gave a humorless laugh. That's the line they fed Congress. But I was in country when your unit was operating. I saw villages where every hostile was dead before they even raised a rifle. I saw the aftermath of missions nobody admitted to ordering. And then, poof, gone. Like smoke. Every operator vanished. Except here you are. Riley's heart thudded painfully. Sir, I can't discuss. You don't have to. Reese leaned closer, his eyes hard. I know what I saw last night. And right now, I don't care if you're a ghost from a Black Ops graveyard or the boogeyman himself. My men need you. This valley isn't going quiet anytime soon. Whoever's coordinating these attacks knows we're stretched thin. And I'll be damned if I lose this outpost because Command decided to erase good shooters from the books. The weight of his words sank in. He wasn't threatening her. He was recruiting her. You want me to run as a sniper team, Riley said slowly. I want you to own this perimeter, Reese shot back. Pick your spot, pick your field, and make sure nothing breathes inside 500 yards unless it's wearing our patch. You can keep your secrets for now. But understand me, Boone, if I even suspect those secrets are a threat to my men, I'll put you in cuffs and ship you to Langley myself. Her mouth was dry but she nodded. Understood. Reese straightened, his tone shifting back to command mode. You've got 12 hours to rest and rearm. After that, you're on overwatch rotations with a spotter. I'll assign Delgado. He can keep his mouth shut when ordered. Riley almost protested. Deadeye operatives didn't use spotters. They were the spotter. But pushing back now would only draw more suspicion. She swallowed it down. Yes, sir. The colonel dismissed her with a wave. Get out of my sight. Back outside, the sun was climbing, the heat baking moisture from the mud into choking dust. Riley sat alone on a sandbag wall, staring at her rifle. The seal glared back at her, a ghost brand from a past she couldn't bury. She remembered Deadeye training, the grueling months in the Nevada desert, the endless hours of calculations, the whispered oaths they swore to missions no one would acknowledge. She remembered the final op, the one that went wrong, the one that ended in flames and bodies and a black curtain dropping forever. She had walked away, traded one identity for another, hoping never to hear the word again. And now here it was. By evening, Delgado found her cleaning the M24 again. He plopped down beside her, chewing a stick of gum like it was his last defense against exhaustion. Colonel's got plans for you, he said. He told me I'm your spotter now. Congratulations, we're married. Riley snorted despite herself. Don't get too comfortable. Delgado leaned in, lowering his voice. He thinks you're special. He's not wrong. But special gets people noticed. And noticed gets people killed in this place. You sure you want that kind of spotlight? Her hand stilled on the rifle. No, a voice inside her whispered. But there wasn't really a choice anymore. Orders are orders, she said quietly. The next morning they climbed the ridge beyond the outpost. Riley carried the M24, Delgado lugged a spotting scope, rangefinder, and extra ammo. The climb was brutal, loose shale underfoot, the sun a relentless hammer overhead. But when they reached the top, the valley stretched before them, wide and raw and exposed. From this perch, Riley could see everything. The snaking dirt road, the dry riverbeds insurgents used like highways, the jagged cliffs where muzzle flashes had bloomed the night before. She settled behind the rifle, scope sweeping, mind sliding into the cool, detached focus that had once made Deadeye unstoppable. Hours passed. Flies buzzed. Delgado muttered curses about heat and boredom. And then, movement. Riley's breath slowed. Through the glass, she saw 3 figures creeping along the dry riverbed, weapons slung low. Too disciplined to be shepherds. Too cautious to be locals. She tapped Delgado's boot. Range? He squinted through the scope. 750. Her finger curled against the trigger. One breath. Exhale. The rifle kicked. A figure dropped, sprawled into the dirt. The others froze, panicked, then bolted. Riley cycled the bolt, shifted, fired again. Another body fell. The third vanished behind rocks. Riley waited, scope fixed, heartbeat steady. Minutes dragged. Finally, the head peeked out, just a sliver. She squeezed. The round split the rock and the man's skull in one crack. Silence returned. Delgado whistled low. Holy shit. Remind me never to piss you off. But Riley didn't smile. She only stared through the scope, searching for more ghosts. By nightfall, word spread through the outpost. Boone and Delgado had turned the ridge into a kill zone. Soldiers joked about her rifle being cursed, about insurgents whispering her name in fear. Morale ticked upward. For the first time in weeks, men believed they might outlast this valley. But Riley knew better. Every shot echoed louder than the last. Every body she dropped drew attention. And somewhere out there, in the shadows beyond the range of her scope, someone was bound to be watching back. And when they found her, they wouldn't just see Sergeant Riley Boone. They would see the last ghost of Deadeye. The ridge had gone quiet after the third kill. Too quiet. Riley Boone had spent enough time behind a rifle to know silence was never safety. It was patience, the kind that meant an enemy was either regrouping or waiting for you to make the mistake first. She stayed on the scope until the horizon blurred, only pulling away when Delgado nudged her boot. Been staring so long you're gonna burn holes in the glass, he muttered. He set down the spotting scope, stretched his arms with a groan. Day 3 up here and I swear I'm turning into jerky. Riley adjusted the M24's bipod without answering. The discipline drilled into her by Deadeye didn't allow for chatter on Overwatch. But Delgado wasn't Deadeye and silence made him restless. You ever wonder what they think? He asked suddenly. Who? The guys you drop. Like what's their last thought? Do they even know it's coming? Riley kept her eye to the scope, her voice flat. They don't think. They die. Delgado studied her a moment, then shook his head. Cold Boone. Real cold. She didn't tell him the truth, that she knew exactly what the last thoughts looked like. She'd seen them in the eyes of insurgents she'd cornered up close. Confusion. Regret. Anger. Sometimes relief. Deadeye training had forced her to memorize those expressions, to use them for psychological mapping. That knowledge never left. Before she could answer, the radio on Delgado's hip crackled. All teams be advised, came Reese's clipped voice. Intel suggests a coordinated push within 24 hours. Expect heavier weapons. Prep your positions. Delgado's humor evaporated. He keyed the mic copy command. Ridge team standing by. Riley exhaled slowly. A major push meant more than stray patrols. Mortars. Technicals. Maybe even foreign-trained fighters. Whoever was bankrolling this insurgency wasn't throwing amateurs at them anymore. That night they rotated back to the outpost. The camp was tense, every man sharpening knives, reloading magazines, double-checking claymore placements. The wounded from the last fight lay in the infirmary tent, their groans a grim soundtrack. Colonel Reese gathered the platoon around a sand table lit by red lamps. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with the weight of men who'd buried too many soldiers. They'll hit us from 3 directions, he said, tracing lines with his finger. South Ridge, East Road, and here, through the Wadi. They've got numbers, maybe heavy guns. But we hold this ground or this valley becomes theirs. And if that happens, every convoy south of Kabul gets cut off. That's not happening on my watch. He looked up, scanning the faces. Boone. Delgado. You'll stay on the ridge. Your fire decides whether the Wadi breach holds. If it collapses, we're finished. Every man turned to look at Riley. She met their eyes briefly, then dropped hers to the rifle resting across her knees. The weight of expectation pressed harder than the rifle's steel. After the briefing, Reese caught her alone. Boone. A word. She followed him into the shadow of a bunker, away from curious ears. I don't give a damn about what you were before, he said quietly. Deadeye, ghost, spook, I don't care. Right now you're mine. But make no mistake, if you pull the trigger up there and freeze, or if you've got some hidden agenda that gets my men killed, I'll put a round in you myself. Clear? Riley held his stare. Crystal. Reese nodded once, then turned away. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's gonna be hell. But Riley didn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the canvas ceiling, memories pulling her back. She saw Nevada again, the Deadeye range, the instructors who stripped names from them, replaced by numbers. She heard the mantra, you are not a person. You are a function. You do not miss. You do not question. She remembered the last mission, the compound that went up in flames, the voices over the radio that screamed and then cut off. Deadeye had died in that fire. But she hadn't. And that survival was the real secret that gnawed at her every night. At dawn, the valley trembled. The first mortar fell short, kicking dust over the wire. The second landed closer, shredding a sandbag bunker into flying fabric. Alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled to positions. Riley and Delgado sprinted back to the ridge, lungs burning by the time they dropped into their nest. Riley set the M24, Delgado propped the spotting scope. Through the haze, movement swarmed, dozens of fighters rushing the wadi, RPG tubes on their shoulders, the sun glinting off mounted guns on technical trucks. Range 650, Delgado said, voice tight. Riley didn't answer. She was already exhaling, squeezing, shifting. The first RPG carrier folded backward. The second stumbled, dropped his tube. The third tried to fire, but the round detonated midair when Riley's bullet struck the launcher. Holy Christ, Delgado muttered. The valley erupted. Machine guns barked from the outpost. Grenades thundered. Insurgents screamed, fell, charged again. Riley's rifle cracked steady as a metronome, every shot precise, every target erased. But there were too many. Truck incoming, wadi center. Delgado shouted. Riley swung the scope. A technical roared forward, a heavy DSHK on the bed spitting fire. Rangers in the trench dove for cover, bullets chewing sand inches from their skulls. Driver, Riley said flatly. She fired. The windshield burst, the truck swerved, flipped sideways into the ditch. The gunner was still alive, staggering free. Another shot cut him down. But more were coming. Mortars rained again, closer this time. One struck near the ridge, showering Riley and Delgado with rock. Her ears rang, the world tilting, but her hands never left the rifle. Boone. Delgado's voice was distant, warped. You good? She blinked hard, shook her head clear, and found her scope again. A new figure was advancing, moving unlike the rest, steady, deliberate, carrying a long rifle. Her stomach clenched. Sniper, she said. The insurgent moved like he'd been trained. Not some farmer with a hand-me-down. This one used cover, fired in controlled bursts, probed for weaknesses. He was hunting her. Riley adjusted, scope sweeping until she caught the faint gleam of glass on the far ridge. There, she whispered. Range 850, Delgado called. The first shot came from the enemy, a whip crack that dug into the dirt inches from Riley's cheek. Delgado swore, ducking. Riley didn't flinch. She settled her breath, adjusted windage, waited. The sniper exposed himself for a second, lining his scope. Riley fired. The round clipped his rifle, spinning it from his hands. He dropped, scrambling behind cover. Did you? Delgado started. Not yet, Riley cut him off. She knew this wasn't over. A trained sniper wouldn't quit from a disarm. The battle raged around them. Insurgents pushed, fell back, pushed again. Riley kept firing, but part of her mind stayed locked on the other ridge, waiting for the counter. It came 10 minutes later. The enemy sniper reappeared, crawling low, retrieving a backup rifle. Riley tracked him, finger tight on the trigger. But just as she fired, a mortar shell slammed the ridge, blasting rock into her face. The shot went wide. Pain lanced through her temple. Blood trickled down her cheek. Delgado dragged her back by the vest, shouting something she couldn't hear over the ringing. When her vision cleared, she saw the enemy sniper had vanished again. Boone. Delgado shook her. You're bleeding bad. She ignored him, shoved back to the rifle. The scope was cracked but usable. She scanned frantically, searching for the glint. Then, there. A flash, far left. The sniper was lining up, not on her this time, on the colonel below, rallying men near the south wall. Her pulse slowed. Her breath evened. Pain faded. The world narrowed to a single pull of the trigger. She fired. The enemy sniper's head snapped back, body slumping. The rifle clattered down the rocks. Delgado let out a long, shaky breath. Remind me to buy you the biggest goddamn steak when we get stateside. But Riley didn't smile. Her hands trembled on the rifle. Not from fear, not from injury, but from recognition. The way that sniper moved. The precision. The training. He wasn't just any fighter. He had been Deadeye. Her past wasn't just catching up anymore. It was firing back. The battlefield still smoldered when the sun dipped behind the jagged ridgeline. Smoke curled from the wreckage of the technical trucks. Spent casings glittered like brass confetti across the trench lines. The outpost had held, but only barely. The ground reeked of cordite, sweat, and blood. Riley Boone sat on the ridge, a rag pressed against the cut on her temple where shrapnel had kissed her. Delgado sat beside her, hands shaking as he lit a cigarette, trying to laugh off the tremors. "Jesus Christ," he said, exhaling a stream of smoke. "I thought that bastard had you. Or me. Or the colonel. Or all three at once." Riley didn't answer. She kept staring through the cracked scope of her M24, though the battlefield below was empty now. The insurgents had withdrawn, leaving behind their dead and the silence of another temporary victory. But her thoughts weren't on the valley. They were on the body of the sniper she'd dropped. The precision, the way he'd moved, it hadn't been random. It had been practiced, ingrained, trained. Delgado flicked ash off his cigarette. "You're thinking too hard, Boone. You did good. Hell, you saved the colonel's ass. Again." She lowered the rifle, wiping blood from her cheek. "That wasn't just some local fighter." Delgado raised a brow. And he moved like Deadeye. Delgado's laugh cut short when he saw her face. "Wait, you're serious?" She nodded, throat dry. Delgado swore under his breath. "Boone, Deadeye's a ghost story. You know that." "Hell, I know that. Some Black Ops thing that got wiped, same way they wipe every Black Ops thing when it goes too far. You telling me you just squared off against one of your own?" Her silence was answer enough. Down in the camp, the colonel was walking the lines, clapping men on the shoulders, checking the wounded. But when his gaze lifted and found Riley on the ridge, he didn't smile. He nodded once, curt, then turned away. He'd seen her shot. He'd know what it meant. That night, the mood in the outpost was split. Half the men celebrated, boisterous, relieved, drinking whatever they could scrounge. The other half sat in silence, staring into the dark, waiting for the next wave. Riley sat alone by the armory, cleaning the M24 with slow, methodical strokes. Each patch of the bore rod dragged through like a memory she didn't want but couldn't erase. Delgado plopped down beside her, offering a dented can of Coke. She didn't take it. "You're wound tight," he said softly. "Tighter than usual, I mean." She looked up at him, the lamplight catching the tired lines of her face. "If Deadeye's still out there, it changes everything." Delgado tilted his head. "For who? For you? For all of us?" Before he could reply, boots crunched behind them. Colonel Reese loomed in the doorway of the armory, arms crossed. "Boone. With me." Delgado stood. "Sir, with respect." "Not you, Sergeant." "Boone." Riley set down the rifle and followed. Reese led her past the perimeter, down into a half-collapsed storage bunker that smelled of damp earth and rust. He shut the door behind them, the lantern casting shadows across his scarred face. "Tell me the truth," he said, voice low. "That sniper today, was he Deadeye?" Riley swallowed hard. "Yes." Reese didn't flinch. He paced once, then turned on her, eyes sharp as razors. "That means two things. One, you're not the last ghost. Two, someone resurrected your unit and they're not working for us anymore." Her pulse hammered. "Sir, if that's true then we're in deeper shit than command realizes." Reese cut her off, his jaw tight. "Listen to me, Boone. I've seen enough wars to know when the deck is stacked. These insurgents? They're not running on goat herder tactics anymore. Somebody's training them. Somebody's giving them discipline. And now I know who." Riley's stomach churned. Deadeye was erased for a reason. If fragments survived. "They're here," Reese snapped. "And they'll keep coming. Which means I need you." Her eyes narrowed. "Need me for what?" Reese stepped closer, his voice low. "To think like them. To fight them. You're the only one who knows their playbook." Riley clenched her fists. She wanted to deny it, to say Deadeye had been a mistake she'd buried. But she knew he was right. If more of her kind were out there, trained killers with no leash, then this wasn't just another insurgency. It was a shadow war, and the shadows were moving against them. She forced her voice steady. "Then you need to know something, Colonel. Deadeye doesn't fight fair. They won't hit us the same way twice. Next time it'll be surgical. Precise. They'll come for leadership. For you." Reese's jaw worked. "Then they'll have to go through you first." He left her there, lantern sputtering. Riley sat in the damp bunker, staring at her scarred hands. The weight of the colonel's words pressed heavy on her chest. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. She was a shield. But shields cracked. By morning, the outpost moved like a hive under threat. Patrols doubled. Claymores wired across every approach. Mortar crews checked and rechecked their angles. Riley and Delgado returned to the ridge, eyes burning from sleeplessness. Hours passed. Nothing moved. The valley stretched wide and empty, like it was holding its breath. Delgado tried to break the silence. "So, you and Deadeye. Was it like some Jason Bourne shit? Black hoods, code names, secret handshakes. Riley didn't look away from the scope. We weren't people. We were numbers. Assets. If you had a name, it was because you weren't good enough to lose it. Delgado whistled low. Sounds like a party? It wasn't, she said flatly. The radio hissed. Contact. South Road. Delgado grabbed the scope. Movement 900 out. Convoy. Shit, Boone, they've got armor. Through her cracked glass, Riley saw it, a battered BMP, Soviet relic but deadly enough, rumbling down the dirt road with insurgents flanking it. Dust plumed behind it. Outpost can't stop that thing, Delgado muttered. Riley's stomach dropped. The outpost had RPGs, sure, but hitting a moving BMP under fire was suicide. Unless. Call it, she said. Delgado blinked. What? Range. Call it. He adjusted frantically. 970. Boone, you're not seriously. She was already adjusting windage, her breath slowing. She wasn't aiming at the hull. Not even the gunner. She aimed lower. The track wheel. She fired. The round sparked off steel just shy. She cycled the bolt, adjusted, fired again. This time, sparks and a jolt. The track stuttered, then clanked off its rollers. The BMP ground to a halt, lopsided. The insurgents scrambled, shouting, trying to dismount. Riley picked them off one by one, her rifle cracking like a hammer of judgment. Delgado let out a disbelieving laugh. Jesus, Boone. You just crippled armor with a bolt action. But Riley didn't feel triumph. She felt the hairs on her neck rise. Because even as she worked the bolt, she saw it, a glint from the far ridge. Not one, not two. Three. Her blood ran cold. Delgado, she hissed. We've got counter-snipers. Multiple. The first shot came a second later. It snapped past her head, burying into the dirt. Delgado ducked, swearing. They're bracketing us. Riley flattened, scanning. These weren't sloppy locals. Their angles were tight, coordinated. Deadeye signatures. Her gut twisted. They're here. Delgado's voice shook. Here who? She didn't answer. She was already firing back. The ridge exploded in a duel of ghosts. Bullets whined, rocks splintered, dust clouds rose. Riley shifted, rolled, fired, moved again. Delgado spotted, shouting ranges through clenched teeth, his knuckles white on the scope. One counter-sniper dropped. Then another. But the third was still firing, moving with the same fluid precision Riley knew too well. The world narrowed. Just her and the last ghost. Her cracked scope blurred at the edges, but she centered the crosshairs, heart steady. The enemy fired, stone shards ripped her cheek. She didn't blink. She exhaled. And squeezed. The figure collapsed, rolling down the far ridge. Silence followed. Delgado panted, adrenaline pouring off him. Holy shit. Boone, you just went toe-to-toe with three of them. But Riley didn't hear him. She was staring at the last body through the scope. On the man's chest, half covered in dust, was a patch. A faded insignia. The same one carved into her rifle. Deadeye. Her stomach nodded. They weren't just fragments. They were organized. They were here. And they were hunting her. The outpost was quiet again, but not in the way that gave relief. It was the silence of men waiting for the other boot to drop. Sandbags were stacked higher. Mortar pits dug deeper. The smell of scorched oil from the crippled BMP hung thick in the valley. Riley Boone sat in the colonel's quarters, helmet on her knees, the patch she'd stripped from the fallen sniper clenched in her fist. The lantern light flickered against the insignia, an eye split by a vertical scar, the mark of Deadeye division. Colonel Reese stood over a map spread across the table, his finger tracing roads and ridgelines. He didn't look up when he spoke. You sure about this? Yes, sir. Riley's voice was flat. The patch is real. The men weren't locals. They fought like us. Like me. Reese finally lifted his head. The bags under his eyes looked deeper than they had yesterday. Then command lied. Delgado shifted uncomfortably in the corner, arms crossed. With respect, sir, what the hell does that mean? Reese leaned back, folding his arms. It means Deadeye wasn't erased. Someone kept them alive. Maybe the Pentagon. Maybe another hand altogether. But if they're training insurgents, we're looking at treason on a scale that'll tear this war apart. Delgado let out a low whistle. Jesus. Riley's knuckles whitened around the patch. Her mind replayed the duel on the ridge, the glint of glass, the way her opposite had moved, calm, relentless, a mirror. If Deadeye had been turned loose, then she wasn't just fighting ghosts. She was fighting family. Reese's voice cut sharp through her thoughts. Boone, I need you to understand something. You're compromised. Her head snapped up. Sir? You're their quarry, he said. They won't stop. They'll keep coming until one of you is dead. Which means I can't keep you in a foxhole with the rest of my men. You're not a soldier anymore. You're bait. The word hit like a punch. Delgado pushed off the wall. Sir, that's bullshit. She's the reason any of us are breathing. Without her. Reese silenced him with a look. Without her, my men aren't a target. The more Boone fights, the more Deadeye adapts. They'll escalate until this outpost is ash. Riley's voice was steady, but her hands shook. So what's your play? Reese pointed to the map. We push north. Abandoned mining complex 10 clicks out. Good cover, decent water source, and no civilians to get caught in the crossfire. If Deadeye wants to follow, we'll draw them out where we control the field. Delgado frowned. And what about command? We're just gonna not tell them Deadeye's alive. Reese's jaw tightened. Command already knows. They're the ones who buried it. Sending word up the chain just puts a bullet on our backs faster. The room went heavy. Finally Riley spoke. Then I'll be the bait. Reese's eyes locked on hers. He didn't nod. Didn't thank her. Just turned back to the map. We move at 0400. The march north was brutal. Heat hammered down, dust choking every breath. The convoy stretched along the valley road, Humvees, supply trucks, infantry trudging on foot. Riley and Delgado rode in the rear Humvee, rifles across their laps. Neither spoke much. Delgado finally broke the silence, voice low enough so the others couldn't hear. You're really okay with this? Being the worm on the hook. Riley kept her eyes on the ridgelines. Doesn't matter if I'm okay with it. It's the only way to end it. He snorted. You talk like you've already written your own eulogy. She turned to him, and for the first time in days, there was a flicker of something softer in her eyes. You ever think about what happens after? If there's an after? Delgado raised a brow. After the war? After the ghosts stop chasing you. Delgado thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. Buy a boat. Get fat. Teach my kids to fish. Riley looked away, the corners of her mouth twitching just slightly. You don't even have kids. Yeah, well, gotta start somewhere. Before she could answer, the radio crackled. Contact front. The convoy screeched to a halt. Gunfire erupted up ahead, tracer rounds streaking the morning haze. Riley kicked the door open, sliding into the dirt. Delgado followed, cursing under his breath. The lead truck was a fireball, smoke clawing at the sky. Insurgents poured from the hillsides, RPGs slamming into the convoy's flank. Chaos swallowed the valley. Riley dragged her scope up, scanning. Her blood iced when she saw it, 3 figures on the ridge, moving with cold precision. Deadeye. Delgado 3 o'clock ridge, she shouted. He followed her line of sight and swore. Son of a bitch. The firefight turned surgical. Riley picked targets, but every time she shifted, one of the Deadeye snipers forced her back down with deadly accuracy. They weren't firing at random, they were hurting her. Boone, they're not even aiming at us. Delgado yelled, ducking as a round sparked off the Humvee's hood. Her stomach dropped. The colonel. She sprinted through the chaos, weaving between burning trucks, bullets snapping around her. She spotted Reese near the center of the convoy, barking orders, dragging a wounded soldier behind cover. Sir, she shouted. They're coming for you. Reese didn't flinch. He shoved the wounded man into Medic's arms and turned, rifle raised. Then let them come. A round cracked past his head, splintering the wood post beside him. Reese rolled behind cover, his eyes locking on Riley's. You see them? 3, she said. Ridge line. Take them, he ordered. Her gut twisted. Alone? You're Deadeye, Boone. Prove it. The word stung, but she didn't argue. She scrambled up the slope, dirt sliding under her boots. Gunfire roared behind her as the convoy fought to hold the valley floor. She climbed higher, lungs burning, until she reached the rocks. The first sniper came into view, crouched behind cover, scope glinting. Riley didn't hesitate. 1 shot through the chest. The figure dropped. The second was waiting. A round tore her sleeve, grazing skin. She dove, rolled, fired, missed. The enemy shifted left, smooth, methodical. Deadeye training. Riley closed her eyes for half a heartbeat. Think like them. Move like them. She popped up right instead, firing before she even saw the shape. The shot punched through the sniper's throat. He crumpled. Her ears rang. Her chest heaved. Then she froze. The last sniper was standing 20 yards ahead, rifle lowered. No mask. No scarf. Just a man's face. And she knew it. Her stomach flipped. Marcus. His smile was sharp, cruel. Hello, Riley. The past slammed into her like a hammer. Marcus Hale. Deadeye 3. Her teammate. Her brother in arms. She'd watched him die. Or thought she had. You're supposed to be dead? He tilted his head. We all are. That's the point. Her rifle wavered. Why? Why here? Why them? Because we're not assets anymore, Marcus said. We're free. No leash. No masters. And you, Riley, you could be too. Walk away from them. Join us. You know what it's like to be used. Her hands shook. She thought of Reese, of Delgado, of the men in the valley fighting for their lives. She thought of the patch in her pocket. Marcus's eyes softened, almost pleading. Don't make me kill you. Her finger hovered on the trigger. She could see it, the life they'd promised each other in whispers between missions. Freedom. Escape. No more chains. Then she saw the valley below. Saw Delgado hauling a wounded private to safety. Saw Reese still standing, firing, refusing to fall. She steadied her aim. Then you'll have to try. Marcus's smile faded. He raised his rifle. 2 shots cracked as one. Riley fell to her knees, ears ringing. Her shoulder burned, blood hot down her arm. Across from her, Marcus staggered, clutching his chest. He sank against the rocks, blood soaking through his shirt. He looked at her one last time, a strange sadness in his eyes. Could have been us, Riley. Could have been free. Then he was gone. Riley sat there shaking, rifle slipping from her hands. The valley echoed with the fading gunfire, but all she could hear was Marcus's voice. The battle ended with the insurgents scattering, their momentum broken. The convoy regrouped, smoke still rising, men dragging the dead and wounded into rows. Riley stumbled back down the slope, Delgado rushing to meet her. Jesus Boone, you're hit. He pressed a hand to her shoulder, trying to stem the blood. She didn't answer. She just handed him the patch she'd torn from Marcus's uniform, her face pale. Delgado looked at it, then at her. His voice was almost a whisper. This isn't over, is it? Riley shook her head. Colonel Reese approached, his uniform smeared with dirt and blood. He looked at the patch, then back at Riley. Now we know, he said grimly. Deadeye isn't dead. They're building something. And they wanted you. Riley's eyes burned, but her voice was steady. Then they'll keep coming. Reese nodded once. Then we'll be ready. But Riley knew the truth. You didn't beat ghosts. You only survived them. And somewhere out there, more of her old brothers and sisters were waiting. Night dropped heavy over the mining complex. The outpost had been abandoned years ago, just rusting conveyors and hollowed shafts that groaned when the wind cut through. Now, the U.S. unit occupied it like squatters in a graveyard, stringing concertina wire across entrances, stationing gunners on rooftops. Floodlights cast pale cones over the dirt yard, but beyond their reach lay only blackness. Riley Boone sat alone on a steel beam, her arm wrapped in gauze, the patch from Marcus still clutched tight in her fist. The image of his face wouldn't leave her. Not in the chaos of battle, not even in dreams. Marcus had been more than a teammate. Once in Deadeye he'd been the closest thing to a brother. They had bled together, killed together. Planned escape together. Now he was just another ghost she'd buried. Delgado found her there, holding 2 chipped mugs filled with instant coffee. He handed one over. She took it but didn't drink. You're supposed to be sleeping, he said. I don't sleep. Delgado smirked faintly. Yeah, figured. Ghosts don't, right? She shot him a look, but there wasn't much venom behind it. He sat beside her, sipping the bitter liquid. For a while they just listened to the night, the hum of generators, the distant echo of a shifting shaft. Finally, Delgado broke the silence. So, Marcus. He was one of yours. She nodded slowly. Deadeye? Yes. He whistled low. No offense, Boone, but you've got a talent for understatement. That changes everything. She stared into the coffee, her voice soft. I thought he died in Kandahar. Roof collapsed on a mission. We buried what we could find. Delgado studied her face. And now? Now I think command buried the truth. Before Delgado could answer, footsteps echoed. Colonel Reese emerged from the shadows, his expression sharp. Boone. Delgado. Briefing. They followed him into the admin building, its windows sandbagged, lanterns glowing over the map-strewn table. A dozen officers crowded inside. The air reeked of sweat and damp paper. Reese tapped a point on the map. Scouts confirm the insurgents are regrouping 20 clicks east. But intel suggests they're not just insurgents anymore. Deadeye cells are embedded in their ranks. Murmurs rippled through the room. Reese continued, voice grim. That means we're not facing amateurs. We're facing trained killers. My killers. Boone's killers. Eyes turned to Riley. She felt the weight of every stare but didn't flinch. Reese went on. Command still insists Deadeye was dissolved. But I trust what I see, and what I saw on that ridge tells me otherwise. Which means we can't rely on DC for rescue. We take the fight to them here now. An officer raised a hand. Sir, with respect, our numbers are thin. If they've got Deadeye, we're outclassed. Reese's gaze hardened. That's why we use Boone. The room stilled. Riley's gut clenched. Reese's finger stabbed the map. She knows their tactics. Knows their drills, their blind spots. We'll strike their camp before they strike us again. Boone leads a small strike team inside, identifies Deadeye assets and neutralizes them. The rest of us pin the insurgents outside the wire. Another officer muttered, You're sending one ghost to kill her own. Reese's eyes burned. I'm sending the only soldier who can. Riley finally spoke, her voice steady. If I go in, I don't come back the same. You understand that? Reese's jaw tightened. None of us do. The raid was set for midnight. Riley loaded gear in silence, hands moving on instinct. M24, Glock, combat knife, 2 extra mags. Delgado checked her kit, his face tight. You don't have to do this, he muttered. Yes, I do. Bullshit. That's survivor's guilt talking. She paused, looking at him. If I don't go, more men die. You know that. Delgado cursed under his breath. Then I'm going with you. Her brow furrowed. Delgado. Don't argue, Boone. Someone's got to keep you alive, and it sure as hell won't be Marcus's ghost. Before she could reply, Reese's voice called from outside. Mount up. They moved under cover of darkness, 6 men in 2 Humvees, lights blacked out, engines low. The desert night swallowed sound, only the crunch of tires on gravel breaking the silence. Riley sat up front, scanning ridgelines, every nerve strung tight. The camp came into view, a sprawl of tents and trucks nestled in a dry riverbed. Fires flickered, silhouettes moving around them. Too many for a local cell. Reese spoke into the radio. Perimeter teams stand by. Boone's team goes in first. Riley led her squad forward on foot, crouched low, boots sinking in sand. Delgado shadowed her, breathing controlled. They slipped past the first tent, knifed the sentry before he could raise alarm, dragged him into the dark. Inside the camp, it was all too familiar. Tight formations, overlapping fields of fire, disciplined rotations. Not insurgents. Soldiers. Deadeye fingerprints everywhere. They reached the central tent. Riley signaled halt. She slipped inside. The lantern light hit her like a punch. Maps covered the table, marked with routes, ambush points, outpost locations. Photos of U.S. patrols. Reese's convoy circled in red ink. And on the wall, patches. Deadeye patches. Dozens. Her stomach dropped. Delgado slid in behind her, his whisper sharp. Jesus Christ. Boone, this isn't a cell. It's a battalion. A voice came from the shadows. Not bad, Riley. Still moving like a ghost. She spun, rifle raised. A figure stepped from the dark. Not Marcus, he was gone. This was someone older, harder. Captain Vance, Riley whispered. Her old CO. Deadeye 1. The man who had built them, broken them, erased them. He smiled, slow and cold. You didn't think we'd die that easy, did you? Delgado raised his rifle. Who the hell? Put it down, Sergeant, Vance said calmly. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. This isn't about you. His eyes locked on Riley. This is about family. Riley's chest tightened. Deadeye's gone. You're a ghost. No, Vance said softly. We're the future. No leash. No masters. We choose the wars now. He stepped closer, voice coaxing. You don't belong with them, Riley. You never did. Join us. Like Marcus wanted. Like we planned before command stabbed us in the back. Her throat went dry. Delgado muttered, Don't listen. He's a snake. Vance's eyes flicked to him, then back to Riley. You know what happens if you say no. These men out there, the colonel, your new family, they'll all burn. Because we're better. Always were. You can save them, Riley. Just step across. Her grip tightened on the rifle. Sweat stung her cut cheek. Choose, Vance said. The air crackled. For a heartbeat she saw it. The freedom, the power, the chance to stop being hunted and start hunting. Then she remembered Marcus bleeding on the rocks, whispering could have been us. She remembered Delgado dragging men from fire. She remembered Reese standing tall under sniper fire, refusing to fall. Her voice cut like glass. My family's already chosen. She pulled the trigger. The shot tore through Vance's shoulder, spinning him back. The tent exploded into chaos, Deadeye operatives bursting in, guns blazing. Riley and Delgado dove for cover, firing back, bullets shredding canvas, lanterns smashing. Outside, the camp erupted, shouts, alarms, gunfire ripping through the night. Move! Riley shouted, dragging Delgado through the flap. They sprinted toward the riverbed as explosions rocked the camp, Reese's perimeter team opening fire. Tracer rounds slashed the dark. Deadeye fighters poured out, organized, disciplined, firing in deadly volleys. This wasn't an insurgent camp. It was a war machine. Riley hit the dirt, scope snapping to her eye. One by one she dropped figures, her hands steady even as her heart pounded. Delgado covered her, saw rattling hot brass across the sand. Then Vance's voice roared through the chaos. Boone is mine. The enemy fire shifted, focusing. Bullets chewed the ground around her, forcing her deeper into cover. Delgado grabbed her shoulder. We gotta move or we're done. Reese's voice crackled over radio. Boone, pull out. That's an order. She hesitated. If they left now, Deadeye regrouped. If they stayed, they'd be buried. Another explosion rocked the camp, fireballs rising. Screams cut through the night. Riley's teeth clenched. She grabbed Delgado, hauling him toward the Humvee. We're leaving. They piled in, rounds slamming against armor. The convoy peeled out, engines howling, tracers chasing them through the night. The mining complex vanished in fire behind them. Only when the noise faded did Reese's voice come through again. Oh, heavy. They're not insurgents anymore. They're Deadeye reborn. And we just woke the hornet's nest. Riley sat in the Humvee, blood seeping through her bandage, staring into the dark. Vance was alive. Deadeye was alive. And they weren't just hunting her. They were building an army. The night before the assault, the camp was silent except for the low hum of the generators and the occasional cough from a soldier trying to smoke without being seen. Rain had come in hard, soaking the tents and turning the dirt into muck. Inside the command tent, Colonel Rains laid the maps out one final time. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep and the coffee on his desk was cold. Every line, every mark on the paper represented lives, his soldiers' lives, and he knew tomorrow would bleed them dry.